It was a night heavy with history. July 21st, 2018, in the heart of Moscow, where the echoes of legends and the roars of modern ambition merged beneath the bright lights of the Olimpijski Stadium. Over 20,000 fans packed the arena, the air dense with tension, nationalism, and raw anticipation. Ukraine's boxing genius, Oleksandr Usyk, stood across the ring from Russia's iron-fisted warrior, Murat Gassiev. The stakes could not have been higher. All four major cruiserweight world titles were on the line: the WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO championships. The winner would become the first undisputed cruiserweight champion of the four-belt era, a legacy-defining night. The contrast between them was striking. Usyk, the master of movement and rhythm, the Olympic gold medalist whose footwork seemed guided by invisible music, and Gassiev, the knockout machine, molded under Abel Sanchez in Big Bear, California, a man who turned power into poetry. As the lights dimmed and the ring announcer called their names, the crowd erupted in divided pride, half chanting for Gassiev, the other for Usyk. Gloves were touched, the referee issued his command, and for a brief heartbeat, time itself seemed to freeze. Two nations, two warriors, and one destiny stood ready to collide under the brightest of lights. From the opening bell, Usyk established control. His southpaw jab flickered like lightning, sharp, snappy, unpredictable. His feet never rested. He glided, pivoted, circled, creating a rhythm that only he could hear. Gassiev, usually the predator, found himself chasing shadows. The Russian tried to close the distance, to cut off the ring, but each time he advanced, Usyk vanished, reappearing at an angle, tapping him with the jab before spinning away. The Moscow crowd cheered each time Gassiev managed to get close, but his punches met only air. The Ukrainian was painting art in motion, a living canvas of precision and movement. The first round was a lesson in control. The second, a demonstration in dominance. Usyk's timing was immaculate, his defense flawless. Even in the brief moments when Gassiev connected, Usyk's composure never broke. He absorbed, adjusted, and continued to dictate the terms. The noise of the crowd faded beneath the rhythm of Usyk's footwork and the constant drumbeat of his jab. It wasn't brute strength that controlled the ring. It was intelligence, geometry, and grace. By the third round, Gassiev began to show urgency. He pressed harder, his shoulders rolling, looking to detonate that devastating right hand. For a brief moment, the tension rose. A heavy cross landed clean, snapping Usyk's head back. The Russian crowd roared in hope, the arena trembling with energy. But Usyk simply smiled, that familiar grin that said, "You can't hurt me." What came next was a clinic in retaliation. Usyk unleashed a flurry, 4, 5, 6 punches and a blur, then pivoted out of range, untouched. His jab became a spear, piercing through Gassiev's guard, setting up hooks and uppercuts that scored with precision. The difference between them grew with every second. Gassiev, powerful but rigid, was being outmaneuvered by an artist who fought with thought, not anger. The fourth round followed the same rhythm, Gassiev lunging forward, Usyk countering, spinning, and landing combinations before escaping untouched. Each round, the pattern became clearer. Gassiev was fighting a man who refused to stand still. It wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a masterclass in controlled chaos. By the fifth and sixth rounds, Usyk's brilliance was undeniable. Every movement had purpose. Every punch had calculation. He jabbed high, jabbed low, changed levels, and mixed feints to confuse the power puncher in front of him. Gassiev tried everything, shifting his stance, throwing to the body, cutting angles, but Usyk's footwork dissolved every attempt. The Ukrainian southpaw dictated the rhythm, not through power, but through perfection. He threw punches in clusters, darting in and out, always one step ahead. The Russian's frustration began to show. He swung hard, but each miss cost him energy, while Usyk seemed to grow stronger. Between rounds, Abel Sanchez barked orders in the corner, urging his fighter to let his hands go. But Gassiev's timing had been dismantled, his confidence disarmed. The bell rang, and Usyk returned to his corner calm, breathing steady, a picture of composure. This was no ordinary display, it was a boxing symphony. The Moscow crowd began to realize they were not just witnessing a fight, but the unfolding of greatness. By the 7th, the psychological tide had fully turned. Gassiev's eyes burned with frustration. His heavy shots found only air, his opponent dancing around him with near-surgical precision. Usyk was in rhythm, a rhythm only he could hear, and every movement was part of a grand design. He jabbed, turned, jabbed again, each step disrupting Gassiev's attempts to plant his feet and throw. Abel Sanchez's voice grew more desperate, shouting over the roar of the crowd. But Gassiev's hands refused to cooperate. The 8th round saw Usyk at his most playful, hands low, head moving, landing combinations with ease. He began talking to his opponent, smiling between exchanges, as if enjoying every second of the challenge. The Russian crowd grew quiet, a 5-punch combination that brought the crowd to its feet, not out of bias, but out of admiration. The fight had become something beautiful. Rounds 9 and 10 cemented Usyk's dominance. He had taken the fight to a realm beyond tactics, into artistry. Gassiev's right hand, once his most feared weapon, was now neutralized. Usyk read it like a book. Usyk's conditioning was something to behold, his body fresh, his mind sharp, his spirit unshaken. Every pivot, every step, every flick of his left hand told the same story. He was in complete control. By the end of the 10th, Gassiev's shoulders sagged. The fight wasn't over, but the decision already was. Even the most loyal Russian fans could only nod in respect. They were witnessing mastery, the rare kind that only appears once in a generation. As the championship rounds began, Usyk refused to coast. Most fighters would protect their lead, but he pressed forward, determined to make a statement. His combinations flowed like poetry, crisp, balanced, and unrelenting. Gassiev tried to rally, swinging with desperation, but Usyk's movement nullified everything. The 11th round was pure dominance. Usyk landing at will, dancing on his toes, peppering Gassiev with jabs and hooks before slipping away untouched. The crowd rose with every exchange, appreciating the sheer skill on display. As the championship rounds began, Usyk refused to coast. Most fighters would protect their lead, but he pressed forward, determined to make a statement. His combinations flowed like poetry, crisp, balanced, and unrelenting. Gassiev tried to rally, swinging with desperation, but Usyk's movement nullified everything. The 11th round was pure dominance. Usyk, landing at will, dancing on his toes, peppering Gassiev with jabs and hooks before slipping away untouched. The crowd rose with every exchange, appreciating the sheer skill on display. In the 12th and final round, Usyk closed the show with authority. He continued to punch in bunches, moving like a ghost, never staying still. The decision was a formality. Both men stood in the center as the ring announcer read the scorecards. 120 to 108, 119 to 109, 119 to 109. The result was unanimous, undisputed, undeniable. When the announcer called his name, the crowd erupted. Oleksandr Usyk, draped in the yellow and blue of Ukraine, stood as the undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world, the first of his era to hold all 4 belts. The Muhammad Ali trophy gleamed in his hands, a symbol of perfection and legacy. In enemy territory, he had silenced every doubt, every question, every skeptic. He had outboxed the destroyer, mastered the pressure, and achieved greatness through skill, not power. The cameras flashed, confetti rained, and for a moment, time stood still. The journey from Olympic champion to undisputed professional king was complete. This night in Moscow was more than a fight. It was a masterpiece. Usyk didn't just win, he redefined what it meant to be great. Against an undefeated knockout artist, in a hostile arena, he proved that intelligence, discipline, and courage could triumph over brute force. Murat Gassiev left the ring that night battered but unbroken, his pride intact. Oleksandr Usyk, draped in the yellow and blue of Ukraine, stood as the undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world, the first of his era to hold all 4 belts. The Muhammad Ali trophy gleamed in his hands, a symbol of perfection and legacy. In enemy territory, he had silenced every doubt, every question, every skeptic. He had outboxed the destroyer, mastered the pressure, and achieved greatness through skill, not power. The cameras flashed, confetti rained, and for a moment, time stood still. The journey from Olympic champion to undisputed professional king was complete. This was not just victory, it was Murat Gassiev left the ring that night battered but unbroken, his pride intact. He had faced a generational talent and given everything he had. But for Oleksandr Usyk, this was the beginning of something larger. That night cemented him as one of the greatest technicians the sport had ever seen. A man capable of conquering divisions and defying odds. The echoes of that performance would follow him into the heavyweight ranks, where he would challenge giants and continue to build his legend. But no matter how far his career climbed, Moscow would always be the night that defined him. The night when a Ukrainian artist turned a hostile crowd into admirers. The night Oleksandr Usyk reminded the world